Hey there, friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here once again, and today I have a brand new video. This one showing off a video that was recommended by my buddy Bacon's Nightmare called Project Magnum. If you don't know this game, I've done a little bit of research about it. It's supposedly going to be a looter shooter coming to PC and consoles down the road. I don't know a ton about it. I know there's still a lot of information that we're yet to see. We need to see more gameplay and all that kind of good stuff. However, I've heard nothing but great things about this trailer, and it has me hyped for the future because from what I've heard, this could be the next great looter shooter. We haven't had a banger one in quite some time. It's been a lot of mixed results lately, so I'm excited to have more in the genre to compete with games like Destiny. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more content like this. We are very, very close to hitting that 1,000 subscribers so we can be partnered on YouTube. So thank you guys so much for helping me get there. Every sub is greatly appreciated and it means the world to me. Now, let's watch the video and then I'll give my thoughts afterwards. Nat Games, okay. It looks clean. Actual engine and in-game footage. Good to know. Okay. Definitely some Outriders vibes here. That looks dope. Oh, if the movement is really good, that's one of the things that I think will separate the good looter shooters from the average ones. Yeah. Okay. If you can do that stuff in game, it's gonna be sick. The grapple, that'd be huge. Project Magnum. Okay. Interesting. That looked almost like a blight from Destiny. I think the game looks really good as far as just aesthetics go. It kind of feels very clean. It looks very next gen, I will say that. Now, that's one of the things that I think has held back some of the recent looter shooters is going between last gen and next gen, which is understandable because the majority of the player base is still going to be on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So I get that completely. I think it's the right call. However, we're seeing games like Battlefield fully use next gen capabilities. That's why they're at 128 players on that game compared to the 64 that's going to be on the last gen, the PS4 and Xbox One generation. So that's something that if this game really just sticks to next gen, I think Godfall is a game that's a good example because it was a bit too early in next gen, and that's why you wanted it to be a launch title. It looks very, very pretty from the outside, but there just weren't enough people with PS5s. Now they are bringing it to PS4, and that might be the way to go for these games. Optimize it first for the next gen, and then work backwards and try to get it to fit for the older generations as you want to expand your player base. Or you delay it for long enough that you can do both, but unfortunately by that time, right, there's probably going to be more advances with next gen, and you might be a little bit behind in that regard. It's hard to do all of the things that make sense for a game because you want, in a looter shooter, you need a solid player base. So matchmaking is easy. So end game has enough players to take those kind of harder challenges on, all of that kind of good stuff. So for me, let's see. It's early yet, right? But the things that you need in order for a looter shooter to be successful are a good looting system that feels rewarding, right? You want to make sure that when you're getting levels ups, now this is all, obviously this caveat, if this is actually a looter shooter in the way that we've seen them in the past, things like Fallout 76, Borderlands, Destiny, Outriders, all these games that don't have a lot in common outside of them you loot in order to progress in the game. Anyway, so the loot system has to feel really good. That's the number one priority. If that's not good, your game is gonna struggle. The story mode is a bit more divisive because you want a solid story mode, but it doesn't mean a lot if the rest of the game is going to struggle. We saw it with the Avengers, which I thought had a very, very good story, but once you beat that, the game got very repetitive. It's improved over time, and that's the other thing that we'll see is at launch, the game is going to be very different from the game a year from now, which is something that I think gamers have to keep in mind when they're looking at looter shooters. So loot feels good. Story should be short-ish. Not a lot of required solo play. That's one of the issues I have with like a Final Fantasy 14 or games that require you to do a lot of it solo. It just feels like it's taking you out of the core element of the looter shooter. So at the very forefront, Avengers is like that as well a little bit. You want the game to be fully co-op the entire time because that's what the game is based around. Seamless co-op. Obviously, you want good progression, but the single most important thing for these looter shooters, which every single one of them, but for maybe Destiny, has struggled with, is a solid end game at launch. You would be better off having a slightly shorter campaign in order to have ready, if not at launch, within the first month of launch, a raid or end game horde mode type activity that is fun, challenging, but also rewarding and doesn't make you feel like you're wasting your time. Like you see progression, right? Outriders does this a bit with the way that they kind of scale, but the problem is at times you're kind of doing the same things over and over in order to get to the one thing at the end. Like your expeditions are solid, but they don't feel like a raid necessarily. And then once you get to that 15 cap, once you beat that end game, there's really not a reason to go back and play it in it. Like you take Destiny's raids, for example, with its random rolled weapons. If you don't get your gun that you want your first week, there's a list of guns you're going to go back in second, third, fourth week. Now, eventually, again, that's going to get old and be bypassed, but you need multiple activity types of that nature in order for a looter shooter to be successful. And that's something that starting at launch, there needs to be some form of solid end game that's going to capture the player base. There's going to be some kind of technical issues. That is something that I believe is just the par for the course with these huge games that have large player bases, and they're going to strain servers at times. We've seen it with battle royales. We've seen it with looter shooters. When there's a new update, when something big happens, there's going to be a server strain. And how they react to that, how quickly they're able to get updates and changes, that's going to be huge. This has kind of been a side rant on my thoughts on looter shooters in general, but if I'm talking to folks that are designing a looter shooter and Project Magnum and being one, those are the things that I would say are the top priorities in order for the game to be successful at launch. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think a lot of people tend to think that these games have to be perfect. I don't feel that way at all. I think it just needs to be fun, and there needs to be a chase, right? Whether it's new weapons, whether it's new armor, whether it's the way your character looks, something like that. There's got to be a chase still. Unless because people are expecting either a 40-hour to 60-hour solo campaign or 10 to 12, 15 hours, but like end game to chase to make it worth your while. Anyway, my name is JoPaWrites. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I hope Project Magnum is a banger. It looks like it's going to be very, very clean. We've seen the ups and downs of looter shooters often, and I just hope that it ends up panning out and we get some more bangers in that genre, because I think it's a genre that I love. I play pretty much all of them that are available, and I want more on my plate for when there's downtimes and that kind of stuff. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you all later.